All right, welcome back, everyone. So, in this episode, I want to discuss a little bit about the planets in more detail. The planets, luminaries that I discussed in the episode of Planetary Returns. I want to talk a little bit more in detail about some of these planets, which we will be having our returns in, with the exception of Neptune and Pluto. And the reason why Neptune, Pluto, we more than likely will not be experiencing those returns in our lifetime is just because they are slower moving planets. They were recently, I shouldn't say recently, but they were discovered within the last 150 years. So Neptune, it takes about 165 years to go through all the 12 signs. And once Neptune has entered into a sign, it stays there for about 14 years. It's very generational. And so many generations experience this, what's going on at a Neptune level. And I will create a separate video discussing in more detail about those influences. And the same with Pluto. And Pluto takes approximately 248 years to go through all 12 signs. And it stays in that sign for about 14 to 30 years. Again, generational. Pluto's actually more of a multi-generational influence because of the length of time that it stays, almost up to 30 years. Okay, but here I want to discuss the influence of Saturn, your Saturn return. Okay, the cards that I have here are showcasing, I decided to bring in the Tabula Mundi just to compare imagery-wise. And this is the Telos Tarot, created by the same deck creator for the Tabula Mundi, Meleen. This is her more recent deck that you could get on her website. So let's just go right into it because I don't want this to be another long video, but I always have so much to share. So with Saturn, okay, Saturn here is the universe, the world, okay? And so with the universe ruled by Saturn, we're seeing completion, okay? That's why Saturn is so important. It shouldn't be anything to get upset about or to get nervous about when you have your Saturn return. I mean, to sidetrack, the first Saturn return you have is when you're 29 and a half years. But I feel there is a pre-shadow, like we have with retrogrades. I feel there's a pre-shadow of a few years prior to your return. And I feel it's the same for all the other planets when you have your return. I think a few months, a few weeks, days, depending on the speed of the planet, you'll start feeling, you'll start getting some influence of some sort to start showing you signs of, to just kind of watch and be more aware of what's happening. And I feel it's the same with the Saturn return, okay? Saturn stays in your sign, in your natal sign. That's what a return is. A return is when the moment that you're born, where all those planets are and where those signs were in those planets at that time, when they come back, ideally at the same degree, okay? So my Saturn return natally to the degree does not happen until next year. But I am already in, and a lot of Gen Xers were already in our own Saturn return, okay? Saturn sidereally is in Pisces, and tropical Western, it is in Aries. And I will talk a little bit about those two differences. Also, the house that it's placed in makes a difference, but I'm not going to go into it. I just want to talk about the energy of Saturn when you're having your return. Okay, so again, with the universe, it's the last card of the major arcana. It's the end of the cycle. It's everything that started with the Fool, how we've developed, how we've worked through challenges, how we've embraced change, how we've welcomed in abundance. All of those things are great, but they're also life lessons to learn from. And that's what this universe is all, the world card, the universe is all about. We usually see a laurel wreath. Here we have a full circle. It's almost like the Orphic egg. And this is the development. This is what's been created, the result of going through that whole journey of the major arcana. And we're also surrounded by the fixed signs. Okay, we have Aquarius. Oh, I'm sorry, we have Aquarius here, Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo. All 4 signs here are supportive of this energy. It's the influences that play part of the role of our development. So going back to Saturn, okay, Saturn is a planet that deals with time. It deals with structure. It's associated with how we deal with things when we're under pressure. It deals with work, our work ethic. Saturn is a planet that rules Aquarius and also Capricorn. Okay, and so when you look at those signs of Aquarius and Capricorn, look at those qualities. Okay, again, I just want to focus on the energy of your Saturn return. Okay, so it's good if you have some understanding of the planets, the signs, and some familiarity with your chart when looking at your returns. Okay, also, Saturn, I feel, is one of the more self-empowering planets out there, because it is, in a sense, almost forcing you to really take a look and seeing where you are now versus where you were 29 and a half years ago. It's also dealing with karma. Okay, how did you deal with karma from the time of your first return to your second return? Okay, this is all growth. This is all what the universe is. It's the completion. And this motto comes to mind, and I mentioned it in the episode about the planetary returns. The universe card for me represents the way that you would like others to see you. You know, be the change, be the development of how you would like to be seen to others. And a lot of people, they don't care. It's like, I don't care what people think about me. That's not great, because that's sort of deprecating yourself and showing that there's a lack of respect that you have for yourself. The Saturn return is going to challenge you with that. Okay. Sometimes your first Saturn return can be the hardest. A lot of people that I know around 27 to 29, myself included, took some losses. It could be personal loss, financial loss, relationship loss, but that's the start of learning about yourself. And also keep in mind, when you're 29, at that age, 29 going to 30, it's time to start putting, some direction. What do you want out of life? What do you want to place into life, right? Be the change that you would like the world to see. How do you want to develop this? Okay. And so that's where Saturn comes in a loving, hard way. It wants to see the growth. Okay. So when it's in the sign Saturn in Pisces, let's talk a little bit about that. And Saturn in Aries. So Saturn in Pisces. Okay. We already talked about the qualities of Saturn. So how about Pisces? Okay. Pisces is water. Again, Saturn is earth. These two can support each other. Even though Pisces is a mutable sign and it needs the space to flow, I don't really see Saturn as, being this heavy, structured disciplined, organized, oriented planet coming in and saying, Pisces, you got to find where you are. It's not so much forcing it, but it's just guiding you. Saturn's like, okay, now let's start focusing on, let's think about some of these characteristics of Pisces. Spirituality. There is also an addictive quality that Pisces has when it comes to certain things. They're also very creative. Saturn and Pisces can really help place a foundation for Pisces when it's dealing with anything of deep work. So I feel Saturn in Pisces is very supportive because of that. It gives that mutability movement of Pisces, just going with the flow and just experiencing things. But now it's time to, let's start moving this into a set direction. You had 29 and a half years from your first return to where you are now in your late 50s to, see where you want to take things. It's almost like a crossroads, but a crossroads when you have your Saturn return, that's giving you permission to go to the next level. And then your third return, Saturn return, happens when you're 87. Okay, some of us may make that, some of us may not. But think from the time of your late 50s to our Gen Xers who are going into our Saturn returns right now, from our late 50s to 87. Okay. Remember here, the universe, completion. What are some of the things that we want to do between now and our late 80s? Okay. So your first return is almost setting literally the foundation. What have you experienced in that time? Your first 29 years. Okay. The karma, the goodness, the badness, all of that. And now where do you direct that energy between your first return and your second return in Saturn? Okay. So Saturn's nothing to be scared of. Saturn is there to, help us put things into a set direction. Okay. Now, Aries. Okay, Aries, that's fire. And so we have earth and fire, earth being that Saturn element. Okay. Fire is going to be hard, but because fire are fire signs of Aries, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Okay. They need to move around regardless of their placement of being cardinal, fixed, or mutable. They still need this space to move around and to create and to have a freedom of expression. So when Saturn is in these fire signs, okay, that's going to be a different ball game. And I talked a little bit about this in the Planetary Return videos. Okay, so when Saturn's in these fiery signs, okay, let's focus on Aries. Okay, what do we think about when we know of Aries? Aries is seen to be someone who gets very is short-tempered, is very spontaneous, is an initiator. Once they get things going, they keep going with it. One thing that Aries does not do is they don't finish things. And that's where the fixed signs come in. Okay, the next sign after Aries is Taurus. So whatever Aries starts, Taurus can come in and just like, okay, all right, let's put this in a, in a set direction. Let's put some form to it. And let's see what we can develop with it. And so Aries with Saturn, okay, this is almost the external revelation of what Saturn and Pisces is doing, okay? Saturn and Pisces, again, is, we're looking at deep-seated work. subconscious, but starting to do the work to understand what's going on. Saturn will force this, will bring up things. It's like, okay, let's look at this karmic issue, or let's look at this issue that's really blocking you. Time to come to terms with that. Okay, that's Saturn and Pisces. Once you've done that work, Saturn and Aries, because Aries is external, they're very outward, we see the results. We see the result of the work that they're doing. And it could be very, very creative, very life-changing, because Saturn is giving Aries this opportunity to really use their energy that they have naturally, and put it in a position that could be something that will be of benefit for themselves, but also for everyone else that Aries is surrounded by. Okay? So be the change that you want the world to see. In Pisces is how all that work is developing inside, and it gets reflected outwardly when it's in the sign of Aries, Saturn in Aries. Okay. Now, I also mentioned that the houses that Saturn is in makes a difference. People have stelliums, so you have to look and see what planets and signs that they are in the houses. You can have a stellium. A stellium is when you have more than, I believe, 3 to 4 planetary placements crowded in one house. There's some people who just have like a massive amount of stelliums, like 6 planets, and in the same sign, all in one house. That's what the stellium is. Different planets, but the same sign, all crowded into one house. So look at that. Okay, look and see where your Saturn is, and learn and take those lessons from it. Okay, Capricorn is and Saturn, and also Aquarius. It's a form of maturity. How have we developed? How have we matured from the time of our first return to our second return? Okay, and then where do we want to go from our second return of our late 50s all the way to our late 80s? Okay, so think about those properties, okay, and those influences when going into your Saturn return. Okay, so this Saturn return, again, natally for me won't happen until almost a year actually, probably this week. So look and see in your chart the degrees of where Saturn and whatever sign you're in, where it will come in your return. Okay, so there can be quite a few of us who have Saturn in Pisces or Saturn in Aries right now, but look at the degree, because right now we're still early on in Saturn. I believe we're just in the first few degrees, because remember, Saturn moves very slow. So it will take some time, again, depending on the degree placement, for it to natally reach the exact moment of your return. Okay, so that's a little overview of Saturn returns. And I know I negated to talk about the air signs and the earth signs in Saturn, but the same rule applies. Look in the air signs of Saturn. Saturn can help put more order with air signs when it comes to thinking things through, okay, and moving forward with these thoughts. But again, we're putting order. We're being a little bit more discriminatory when Saturn comes in. It's forcing us, it's telling us, it's guiding us to really listen and be mindful of what's happening in your environment. Okay, how we think, how we're going to take action, how we're going to lay the foundation for the next stage of where we are in our lives. Okay, and Earth signs and Saturn, that can be good, but you also have to be careful, because when we have Earth and Earth, there may be too much of a weight. So Taurus, Capricorn, and Virgo, they're all ruled by different planets. Okay, Capricorn, as I said, Saturn. Virgo is an Earth sign ruled by Mercury. And then, of course, Taurus is in Venus. It's ruled by Venus. So look at those Earth signs and be careful with the qualities that Saturn can have effect on you, because you may feel to push these elements a little bit more, like stay fixated too long on certain aspects of building something and not really allowing to grow. Okay, you have 2.5 years in your Saturn return. You can almost give yourself a time frame to start developing the things that you like to see within yourself. Okay, so 29.5 years, your first one. Okay, look back and see what was going on during the first 29 years. And if you are older, see where things have led, career-wise, relationships, you as an individual between 29 and your late 50s, if you're entering your second return. And then those who are older, who have already surpassed their second return, how are things developing? And that's something I would like to hear. I would like to hear people's experience with the returns, the first part, the second, and even the third part, if someone's moving closer to their third return. Happy Saturn return to you, because to make it to 87 is quite prominent. So there you have it. Okay, keep in mind the years prior to your return, at least 2 to 3 years, is when you'll start feeling these changes, excuse me, these signs. Things are starting to happen, and things to pay attention to and take notice of, and make the changes that you really need to do for yourself, so that when this return ends, you have a better sense of yourself. All right, so I will choose the next planet to discuss for returns by next week. Okay, I may not do it in order, but I'll go by how I feel things are, and I'll look astrologically to see where everything is as well. Okay, so thank you for watching. This is a little bit more information about Saturn returns and their influences on you when they do happen. Okay, so look at the great learning lessons and the positive aspects that you could gain from Saturn return, and not to get fearful of it. Okay, all of these planets have lessons for us to learn from. So on that note, have a wonderful week. Any questions and comments, of course, feel free to leave them in the comments. All right, I will talk to you soon.